Liam Lawson got left hanging by Red Bull after they promised him a racing seat for 2025 in one of their two teams. Now he basically has to find his own spot after the team decided to keep Perez and Ricciardo. Here's the thing, Lawson is only 22 years old and he did amazing when he got to race 5 times for one of the worst teams back then. This shows he's got real talent. And other racing teams are starting to notice what's happening between him and Red Bull. Marco even said there's a special rule in Lawson's contract that could let him leave Red Bull if he wants to. So we might to see him driving for someone else, and Red Bull might really regret this later. It's pretty safe to say that Liam Lawson is probably one of the most upset drivers right now, even though all these important Red Bull people went around telling everyone they'd give him a seat starting in 2025. Now he doesn't have one with the team and has to look somewhere else. Helmut Marko talked about what's going to happen with Bulls before this really important meeting with the big boss people. It looks like they changed their mind super fast from wanting to race with young drivers, which is what the money people wanted, to a team that hasn't changed anything about how they do things, even though their results aren't anywhere close to what they hoped for. Before the season started, everyone thought Racing Bulls would do way better. Racing Bulls are now in a really scary spot, where they might lose a driver who could become a superstar. He did incredibly well when he raced against Tsunoda in those 5 races back in 2023. Picture this, you're Liam Lawson and you get called up out of nowhere to take Ricciardo's place for some races. You don't even know how long you'll be racing, and everyone just expects you to drive without crashing the car. But then you managed to finish 9th place in Singapore, and got the best result any AlphaTauri driver had gotten at that time. Pretty awesome for someone who wants to race full-time in F1, right? But apparently not if you're part of Red Bull, because what they're doing doesn't make sense to anyone. They gave Perez a new contract even though he only got 28 points in his last 8 races. He's now closer in points to Bottas, who only drove 1 race in Jeddah and got 6th place, than he is to his teammate Verstappen. Red Bull has been getting a lot of criticism lately for their choices. According to F1 Insider, even the Verstappen family was shocked that Perez got to keep his contract. Before the meeting, they were told that Max would get a new teammate within the next 10 races of 2024, but both Horner and Marko made it clear that when it comes to picking drivers, Perez and Ricciardo are Red Bull's chosen ones. Their plan is to give Perez a car that he can work with better, instead of just putting in a driver who would adapt to the car and get way better results than him. It's pretty weird when you think about it, and the person who gets hurt most in all this is definitely Lawson. But Marko did say that things might get shuffled around again for 2025, which gives Lawson a tiny bit of hope, but it's not something he can really count on for his career, especially with how things have been going lately, with Red Bull making big promises in public that they haven't kept. Nobody expected Perez to be fighting up front with Verstappen, especially when the RB20 car started getting worse really fast. But if we look at this chart, we'd see that pretty much any driver out there would do better than the Mexican driver right now. In the first 7 races of the season, Perez got 107 points while Verstappen got 161. That's kind of okay because Verstappen was in his own league and Perez was consistently getting on the podium. But from race 8 to race 14, Perez only managed to get 24 points, which is only of the lowest amount any driver on the grid has scored, let alone a driver who had probably the best car for quite a while. As we saw during the Belgium qualifying, Perez is also the only driver on the grid who hasn't led a single lap in any race. He's the only driver in the top 8 who hasn't won a race, either. The fact that he's in 7th place instead of 8th is only because Russell got kicked out of the Belgium results because his car was too light. I know that maybe having Lawson replace Perez might have been too big a jump for the New Zealand driver, but a promotion where Ricciardo or Tsunoda could have tried for that second seat in the RB20 while Lawson developed his skills in Racing Bulls would have been perfect for Red Bull. This is especially true if their superstar Verstappen decides their car isn't the most dominant anymore and he might switch to Mercedes. This is definitely going to be a huge question mark for Red Bull's future, especially now that they have so much to worry about. They need to figure out if they can fix their car and focus only on the Drivers' Championship. By keeping Perez, they've basically given up 1st place and maybe even 2nd or 3rd place. Both Ferrari and Mercedes have drivers who are getting good points every single weekend. One thing that doesn't look good with everything happening in the team is all the promises they've been making that haven't come true yet. For example, when Lawson had a chance to talk with other teams that wanted to give him seats in 2024 like Williams, Horner went public saying there was no need for the New Zealand driver to do that. He said it was just 1 year that he'd be without a job at Red Bull. When Horner started to calm down about all the Lawson excitement, even though Ricciardo was doing badly at Racing Bulls, Marko got everyone excited again by saying that Racing Bulls money people said what they thought. They said the team needs to have 2 young drivers, and that second seat should belong to Liam Lawson. The New Zealand driver even got to test at Silverstone just like Ricciardo did when he came back to the team that started his whole career. Even though the results were really impressive and he was supposed to compete against Ricciardo to see who would replace Perez at Red Bull, which would have been an even bigger step in Lawson's career. Now that whole plan is gone. Red Bull chose money and sponsorship deals and marketing value instead of talent. While Lawson definitely doesn't know as much technical stuff as Ricciardo about what the car needs and what it doesn't, that can be learned pretty quickly if the team is willing to be patient and spend some time teaching him. Now there's another team that could really benefit from this whole situation, and that's Audi. The German team has already signed Hülkenberg as their main experienced driver, and if they want a young driver who wants to bravado the entire F1 world that he's exactly as good as he showed in those 5 races in 2023, then Lawson is the perfect choice. Nothing motivates a driver more than wanting to prove himself with a different team. We've seen how well Gasly and Albon performed once they got dropped from Red Bull. And by the way, their results were way better compared to the terrible job Perez is doing right now with Red Bull, and he still gets to keep his seat. There's also been lots of talk from Lawson's manager that he would have gotten the Red Bull or Racing Bull's seat in 2025, but Marco went ahead and said these rumors weren't true. Now that it's confirmed Ricciardo will stay in his seat, it would be really interesting to see how things work out at Red Bull now that they don't have the most dominant car on the grid. The RB20 is definitely not working like it should, and Verstappen finishing 5th in 2 races in a row even after getting a 10th-place penalty in Belgium, which he did in 2022 and 2023, and went on to win both those races, clearly shows something is wrong with the car. This has also been one of the main things to talk about at the meeting that decided Lawson's future with Red Bull's family. It's pretty obvious he'd want to use that escape clause in his contract as soon as possible. Right now, besides Audi, Alpine might be an interesting choice for him too. Even though Alpine has 2 really interesting options in Duhan and Schumacher, especially with Duhan, since they learned from their mistakes with Piastri and don't want to give a ready-to-go Driverto another team, there's a small chance they might be interested in Lawson. These things get decided through test drives, and if Lawson manages to absolutely beat these other candidates if he gets a fair chance, of course, then he might hope that he and Gasly will be the main drivers leading the big changes that Alpine is going through right now. With all this in mind, do you think Lawson got treated unfairly by Red Bull? And more importantly, do you think things will change in 2025 when drivers get looked at again, possibly with a much better outcome coming for the New Zealand driver? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's showing up on your screen right now.